If you've deployed a chatbot or AI agent in the last 2 years, there's a good chance your team is measuring the wrong thing and it may be making the problem worse, not better. Most companies track something called deflection rate, how many customers the bot handled without involving a human. It sounds logical, but my guest today says it's the equivalent of measuring how many people visited your website and left. You learn almost nothing about revenue. Devere Ginsberg is the founder and CEO of Encore. He's helped 40 international financial institutions replace broken implementations with agents that actually convert. And he's built a methodology called interaction mining that flips the entire AI deployment playbook upside down. Understand your conversations first, automate second. By the end of this conversation, you'll know why the most popular metric for AI success is quietly destroying results, how to find the hidden revenue already inside your customer interactions, and what it actually takes to build an AI agent that behaves like your best salesperson, not just sounds like them. Devere, great to have you on the show. Most AI vendors and most procurement teams measure success by deflection rate, how many customers the bot handled without a human. You call that the wrong metric. Walk me through what made you so convinced and what measuring the wrong thing actually costs a business.
Yeah, of course. So first of all, thank you very much for being in this podcast and being invited. As you shared, I'm Dvir. I'm the CEO and founder of the company. I hold a PhD in computer science, and actually before doing that, I was building AI agents at Microsoft and prior to that at Facebook. And I think that as the industry started to implement and introduce more and more AI agents into their day-to-day processes, whether it's call center operations, outbound conversations, chatbots on websites, they needed something to measure. And the thing that was the most logical measurement at the time was measuring, are you able to save costs? And how are you measuring cost reduction? How many people you were able to take off the call center? I think what these companies discovered very fast is that not only that the customer satisfaction score dropped, and I think they were very surprised by it, but most clients didn't want to speak with their agents. But measuring the deflection rate actually hid the fact that many clients didn't speak with a human because they hung up. So you were losing customer twice. First, you went back and said, wow, we are getting 30, 50, 70% deflection rate, but only when you listened in or only when you called these clients later on, asking them how was their interaction or experience, you understood it was extremely poor. And this is why we are actually measuring ourselves the same way reps are being measured, which means that if it's a contact center, we are measuring or net promotion score or satisfaction score or completion score. If we are working with sales teams, we are measuring the cross-sell or upsell opportunities that we were able to close. If we are working with insurance companies and we are very active on the travel insurance space, they have a metric called premium per day. How many policies were you able to complete in your daily shift? And we are measuring our agents the same way they are measuring theirs. Now, I do want to say that the previous generation agents, and it's funny to call something that was invented 2 years ago last generation, but the old way was very logical because the way older AI agents were built was based on prompting, right? And I think we all have now experience in prompting. We use ChatGPT, we use Claude, we tell it what to do, and that's basically the concept behind prompting. But these agents were extremely limited. They spoke and answered like robots. And this is why the experience was very poor. What we understood, and I think the entire industry is now walking toward that place, is that if you don't learn and study very well what is working today for your tellers, lenders, bankers, agents, you have zero chance of building AI agents that actually perform well. And this is why every implementation and every partner and client that we have, we start with what we call interaction mining. And interaction mining is our IP. We have 2 patents around it, which basically allows us to take all the conversations that an organization already has, whether it's calls, voice conversations, and chats, and study from these processes what works and what doesn't. So when our AI agents speak with an end customer, we are actually cloning how top performers handled very similar situations before.
Yep, there's a lot to unpack there, but let's start with before Encore, you were building recommendation systems at Microsoft and Meta. The people also like features that show up on every website. You said that those banners work technically, but nobody clicked them. What did the gap teach you about the difference between knowing what a customer needs and actually delivering it in a way that they engage with?
Yeah, 100%. So the people also like banners. They are extremely popular even today. But since the moment they were first introduced into the market and into the mobile space, we see a decline in click-through rate and engagement rate in these banners. And this is because while at the past that was the only alternative someone had to explore and understand what else can they buy or use or utilize within that website, today engagement doesn't really work that way. And recommendations needed to adapt as well in order to fit how clients are now buying as well as exploring. So what we saw that these people also like banners or even the emails that we sometimes get with, take for example Amazon, you bought something 2 days after you get a set of new recommendations. The click-through rate on these engagements declined dramatically over the years. Now the engagement rate sits on almost zero. What is working very well is when you can guide or explain to the customer why that is relevant for them or how that item together with the previous item can actually create a relevant bundle for you as a client or as a prospect. Now, to build that engagement through conversation, you need to go conversational. And this is exactly the point where we started Encore basically as a platform that can take recommendations, take deep insights, and say, when I want to engage with a customer, I'm not going to simply send them an email. I'm going to guide them as a concierge that actually explains to the customer why we are even having this engagement. And that was something that was not possible in 2022. It wasn't even possible in 2024, but is now basically the only way to truly create meaningful engagement with end customers.
That's very interesting because you've walked into dozens of organizations that already had AI deployed and replaced several vendors. What's the specific thing you find in those before states that the company wasn't even aware of? Could you give us the most alarming example you can share?
Yeah, sure. Unfortunately, today, the amount of examples that we have, both from human tellers as well as AI agents going rogue, is just too big. We are deploying interaction mining analysis on banks where sometimes the tellers are not even certain what are the guidelines, regulations, prices, fees attached to products. Sometimes we even see offshore tellers not reading the name of the company properly as they are doing outbound calls. Sometimes these call centers serve multiple different enterprises and they simply have a small name on the screen saying you are now getting a call for X enterprise and they need to go immediately point blank. And sometimes they don't even read out the name of the enterprise correctly. So the reason why we love starting our interactions with interaction mining analysis, because it gives the enterprise true understanding of where their processes work, where their processes work worse, and what can be optimized. Are there any revenue opportunities that they have missed that with AI and augmentation of their existing personnel, they can improve dramatically?
You mentioned in our last conversation that such scenarios could have created real liability. What did that look like?
You're asking liability in terms of existing tellers going off script or AI agents?
Yeah, both with the previous agents that they were using or even human interactions that where conversations go off script or pear-shaped, if I could put it that way, that could have caused real liability. Could you give us a couple of examples?
Yeah, of course. There are the examples everyone heard from Ford selling cars for $1, all the way to Air Canada. Basically, their agent faked a cancellation policy. So clients would ask for cancellation policy, and the bot would make up fake cancellation policies all the way to the law department, saying that Air Canada needs to comply with these regulations and rules that the bot created on the spot. So the chances of hallucination and agents going rogue is huge. And enterprises understand that and they are extremely worried by it. Rightfully, I think that AI presents many possibilities. And I think that the thing that we get excited by the most are not replacing what existed, but creating business cases that the bank or insurance company wasn't able to even think of or imagine without such a technology. So the opportunities are huge. I think that I'm here because of that. But at the same time, compliance and regulations are a critical piece as well. This is also why the approach of, again, I'm going back to the example of prompting, is not the answer going forward. And without truly understanding how top performers, humans that are skilled and capable, are managing these interactions, there is no chance to be able to provide similar experience in terms of quality, compliance, engagement with AI agents.
You mentioned interaction mining. I'd like to dive into that a bit more because most AI vendors say configure, prompt, deploy. You do the opposite. You analyze every existing customer interaction first. So, could you walk me through what that process actually looks like? What are you listening for and what do you find?
Yeah, of course. So the enterprises we work with, they have a data point registered for everything their clients are doing, but zero data or analytics to what these clients are saying. Now, these data points are being registered, but no one is putting attention to them. So we are working with enterprises with sometimes millions of recorded hours in the call center. No one picking up the glove to ask, what are we doing good and what are we doing worse? So interaction mining is our ability to read through every conversation, whether it's voice or chat, extract and extrapolate what's working well, what can we duplicate, what should we uh, avoid from saying, and what are the specific points within a conversation where the friction goes so high that we actually need to escalate it to a manager or to a human. And this is also our ability to identify revenue opportunities that are being missed. And we often work with enterprises saying, we know we have literally money lying on the floor in terms of engagement, in terms of outreach, in terms of collections, that we are not picking up because we don't have the skill set or the manpower to do so.
Here's what I'm trying to reconcile. The thing that makes Encore different, the analysis phase, understanding conversations before building anything, I would imagine is also what slows deployment down. But you've told me that in the short to medium term, you like to get time to go live under 30 days. When you compress that timeline, aren't you doing less of the thing that makes you Encore? This is a genuine strategic tension, I'd imagine. So, yeah, if you could explain that.
Yeah, I love the observation. I agree. When we started doing interaction mining or analyzing what exists today was very unpopular. So the enterprises we engaged with, they didn't understand why we insist on that. And even some of our AEs, our sales reps, they would ask us to skip that step because, as you said, it's extra friction. But I think that what we now understand that is in order to have a successful, meaningful project, a happy customer, interaction mining is a must. And while it takes a bit more time now, of course, interaction mining is fully automated. So after you go through the regulatory hurdle, it's automatic, takes less than a day. It is a mandatory step to have AI agents that are qualified, successful, and work well. And I think this is the differentiator that we insist of, because if not, we are just like any other chatbot that is built by any white label platform.
In our previous conversation, you described something that stuck with me. You analyze what your best salespeople do differently than train AI agents on their behaviors and not just their words. You said the agents end up not just sounding like your top performer, but behaving like them. What's the difference between an agent that sounds like someone versus one that behaves like them?
So without going too much technical here, I will say that agents that sound human are already becoming a commodity. So whether it's vendor A or vendor B, that competition has almost saturated. And every other day we hear an AI agent that sounds better than their competitors. To be honest, and I apologize if it's too controversial, sounding more like a human has been commoditized, and eventually the big giants will be able to win over price and still offer better solution than the smaller startups. This is how I interpret the market. At the same time, how to interact with the customer, the right analogies, because you as a bank, you have a very specific product others don't have the same. You have your own branding messaging and branding language. You have your own bank's DNA. That is something that no giant can replicate. What we are doing is that we are distilling that DNA and we are giving it back to all of your clients at scale. So sounding like a human moves from having an Australian, an English, or an American accent to speak like bank A or B or C or insurer B or D in an automated way.
But is there a specific behavior, not language, that you've been able to replicate in an agent?
So emotions can vary depending on the use case. We're doing collections use cases where being thoughtful and kind is crucial. We are replicating and working with lenders where you need to work like a sales rep and know what makes you different and better as a bank. We are working with servicing centers where managing frustration is key. It moves all the way from telling jokes sometimes, and our clients sometimes they are being from wowed to concerned, hearing their own jokes. We are working with a lender. He has 50 different dead jokes he likes to tell to his clients. And when he heard our agents use and utilize his own dad jokes the same way he's doing that in calls, he was amazed. And the fact that we are giving that type of persona to these lenders is what makes AI agents of 2024 and AI agents of 2030 apart.
That's quite the leap. You use the term revenue leakage, the hidden revenue falling out of customer interactions that businesses don't know about. Where does it actually go? Is it lost deals, missed upsells, failed handoffs? And how does a company even begin to start to see it?
So many of the organizations that we work with know that their clients can be provided with better services, more products, but no one is communicating that to them. And I think it goes back to how we started the interview. Simply sending an email, letting a client know that the bank now has a new product line that might fit them. No one clicks these emails, no one even understands. The issue is that there is another person that they don't understand, and that's usually the teller. Because most banks that we work with, their tellers, they are quite new. They are uneducated about the different product lines the bank offers. So even when the opportunity comes, and sometimes the clients even beg to be offered with that specific product, the teller can't even identify that. And again, it all goes back to interaction mining, because when we show our clients the various revenue opportunities that their call center has that no one is picking up, that's the moment where they say, I thought that AI is only for operational reduction. I now understand the amount of money I have on the floor, I'm not picking up.
Can you give us an estimate of what percentage of revenue the average financial services company is leaving on the table from this?
Yeah. So that's an assessment that is hard to do. I can say that in the workflows that we augment or replace, we get all the way up to 30% uplift in conversion rate, better than what they had before. And these are 30% relative uplift in conversion rate that can result in millions of dollars of closed won deals that no one would even understand are an option or possibility beforehand.
You refuse to accept deflection as a success metric, but Gartner and most enterprise RFP templates still list it as the primary KPI for conversational AI. So here's a practical problem. How do you close deals when the buyer's procurement process is measuring success by the metric you say is wrong?
So that's actually not a problem. And that's a question we usually wait to get. Because how we operate, we can show that not only that we get better success rates, but also our deflection rate is higher. But when you cross-reference our deflection rate with the sentiment score or the completion rate, not only that our deflection rate is higher, but also the completion rate is higher. So suddenly it stops being one vendor told me X and the other told me X plus 10, which is very fast escalates to pricing wars. It turns into I have a product that is more superior with a team that understands my challenges better.
From what you said earlier, you're replacing deflection scores with a metric, but you base it based on the specific company and industry that you're working in. Is that correct?
And even more, the specific use case and call center that we are augmenting. Because we understand why having one measurement for everything is the easiest, but it's not the measurement that businesses follow. And I think that especially many of the clients that we have, they are extremely successful companies. There's companies that are growing. And when I'm speaking with head of sales in an insurance company, and that insurance company is scaling extremely fast, they don't care about deflection rate. If they now have 12% closure rate, which is very high for insurance products, and I'm offering deflection rate, he's saying, I don't need to. I'm earning a year's salary for one of my tellers in 5 or 10 days. So the question moves from, can I get better deflection rates, to, can I call the people that your tellers don't have the time to call to and get the same conversion rates as your top performers? And this should be the equation that they are asking.
Interesting. Let's assume it's a sales team. I'd love to hear your perspective on how they feel when they learn that AI is being modeled on their top performer.
Yeah, we are not replacing people as we are replacing tasks. No sales rep was trained in order to go through voice verification processes, reading out bank accounts, or typing the same form for the 19th time in one shift. Eventually, these are the tasks that we are taking. And yes, the tech is improving, but eventually we are working with loan officers, and this is why we chose that space. We are not working in the support operations, mundane tasks. We are dealing with the core, fundamental, hard tasks that enterprises are doing. And the people that we are augmenting, sometimes they have mastered in economy or finance. They don't want to do these smaller tasks. And you know what? I will even say further. The institutions that we are working with, they are unable to hire more people to their call centers. When they go live with new product lines, they are looking for tellers to be able to augment their call center operations, unable to find new people. And even the people that do get hired, their tenure within the call center is less than 1 year. So eventually we are becoming the horsepower, the augmentation layer on top performers. So far, we have deflected, and here I can use the word deflected, we have deflected the easier tasks. So the real relationship managers can keep on focusing on generating a meaningful relationship.
Makes sense. Most AI vendors treat financial services as uniquely difficult because of regulation. But in our previous conversation, you said something that surprised me, that chemical manufacturers, fashion retailers, and warehouses all feel exactly the same fear about Gen AI compliance. If everyone feels equally exposed, what does that tell us about whether regulation is really the barrier people say it is?
Yeah, so regulation, again, I hope I'm not too controversial here. Regulation is the biggest accelerator this industry had. Last year, when we were convincing or speaking with enterprises about the chances of AI going rogue or AI hallucinations, this was usually the moment in the deal where they would say, we don't have an AI policy yet. We are pausing. We are waiting to have something more definitive. Luckily enough, regulation here moved extremely fast, faster than in other industries. And regulation now determines not only if, because this would have been the easy choice, but the wrong way. Not only if AI can hallucinate, because it can. It can. Where the tech is now and where it will be, at least in the next few years, AI agents will hallucinate. Less, but it will. And the fact that the regulator is now putting guidelines around where AI agents can hallucinate and what AI agents can and cannot do is actually performing as an accelerator for us and for the market, because now we know where to put our investments, where to make sure that the agent is not going rogue, and what are the things that we can provide with the safe knowledge that we are not exposing ourselves or our partners and clients.
So what would you say is the actual barrier if it's not regulation?
So the biggest barrier is the AI transformation that the enterprise need to go through. We are working with enterprises with hundreds, sometimes thousands of employees. And the amount of different use cases that they have in mind is enormous. And they need a guidance. They need the guidance. They need compass to know where to go. Because what we also see is that we meet many enterprises that had a bad decision, a bad choice 2 years ago. They didn't see ROI. And I think you mentioned before, and more than 95% of AI projects fail. And many enterprises, they see that failure and they say, we are not progressing. Now, it is our job, and this is why we force, quote unquote, our clients to go through the interaction mining process, because it increases the chances of them actually knowing where they should invest.
Brilliant. Your marketing claims 30 to 100% conversion lift. That's quite a wide range. What determines where a customer lands, and what's the difference between a company that gets 30% versus one that gets 100%?
Yeah. So 100% is very hard, of course, but it all goes down to what is the data that you're learning from. I spoke with the chief scientist of Oracle a few days ago, and he said that everyone are looking at what AI can produce. So AI for data, but no one is asking what data should we introduce to AI. And many people, they just go ahead and run very fast and they just build. They start from the middle of the process. This is how we see it. They immediately start from generating. This is not the right way to work. The right way to work is to define and determine what data points you are introducing to the AI. For us, is the entire interaction layer of the organization, and build AI agents based on that. And without that, you will never be able to bridge that 20 to 100%.
So it's really the kind of data. How would you help companies identify the kind of data that they need to be feeding into AI?
Yeah. So for us, it's relatively simple. We usually focus on customer facing interactions. So the data that we need is customer facing interactions. It's call logs, transcriptions, SMSs. If they use omni-channel like WhatsApp or whatever it may be, these logs as well. And this is what we learn from.
I'd love to walk through a scenario. Say a chief credit officer at a regional bank decides to deploy Encore. Walk me through what the first 90 days looks like. Who's involved? What do they see first? And when do they see their first result?
Yeah. So the first thing, as I mentioned before, and of course, I'm not objective. I'm constantly going back to interaction mining. It can be something else, but the first step should be learning what is currently working, because intuition is not enough here. We are working with enterprises where the chief experience officer is very certain of what works and what doesn't. But then when we do interaction mining, they discover that it's very far from what actually going on in the call center. So first thing is understanding very well the from your own data what is right and what is wrong. Then our AI agents will actually build themselves automatically. So from the interaction mining, we already spin up those AI agents. And these AI agents are then being tested by, and don't laugh here, more AI agents that we build to challenge the AI agent. So you have the AI agent that was cloned from top performers within the organization. And then we have AI agents that were cloned from customers that had more complex conversations. So we know that we have a good enough coverage of these interactions.
That sounds quite like a really robust plan. Um, when does the internal skeptic, the person who didn't want to do this, start to come around?
Yeah. The fun thing is that it's extremely engaging, right? We sometimes I go home and during the hypercare or pre-sale process, we have webhooks, which are basically notifications that someone called the agent and tested it because most of the testing is now automated. But every once in a while, I get the CEO of the bank we work with. She's making calls, testing it, sometimes giving it to her family to test it as well. And when they see the quality, suddenly their resentment and also the concern that the agent wouldn't perform as they expected, the shield is going down and they are being much more open to the idea.
So if a financial services CEO is listening to this right now and is about to issue an RFP for an AI agent platform, what should they do first before they talk to any vendor, including you?
Yeah. So first of all, and again, I promise that will be the last time I'm mentioning interaction mining in this episode.
You're right.
When we see an RFP or RFI for AI agents and we don't see a data analysis phase, the first thing we do is call them and tell them, regardless of whether you're going to choose us or not, that is a mandatory step. That is a mandatory step because you don't know what you don't know. And this is the first step to understanding what you don't know. The second is while Anchor's interaction mining is probably the best in the market, 2 patents, all of that, some of it you can do yourself already. Some of it, the enterprise, and we are working with very tech forward, tech thinking enterprises with CIOs, with chief data officers, with CTOs that know how to do these things. Start by asking the hard questions, your data, to understand where you should put your focus. Where you have the most amount of calls you can automate. Where your calls are being dropped with no service, with no good service being provided. These are the questions you need to ask yourself and not hope or think that you know the answers without actually analyzing these questions.
Would you say that there are questions that should be on every RFP for conversational AI that almost never are, apart from the data analysis part?
Yes. So continuous improvement is a mandatory piece. And many enterprises that we work with, they see the process as everything that comes before the go live date. And most of the work starts the day after. Most of the work starts after the agent went live, and we need to start working on a deployment plan that is bigger, more vast, with more use cases where the growth potential is larger, going for more use cases without breaking the existing use case you just created. So I think that's the thing that most forget. And at least half of the RFP or RFI and the way the enterprise is thinking on the process should actually be on the day after.
Certainly. You've built a company around financial services, but in our previous conversation, you mentioned working with warehouses, chemical manufacturers, fashion retailers. Long term, is Encore a vertical platform for financial services or a horizontal platform for any organization with high volume revenue interactions?
Yes. So thank you for the question. We started as a platform for enterprises, specifically financial institutions, and we are working with banks and insurers for the maturity of our operations. With that in mind, I will say that as we expand in terms of our tech stack and capabilities, we see the power our technology brings to other verticals as well. So while most of our engineers and professionals are now very experienced around banking and insurers, in the near future, we are expanding and will expand further to other verticals where we can serve and augment customer facing interactions with AI agent that learns from the best and not only operates from the middle.
I saw your note in the chat. I have one more question and then we'll wrap up if that's okay with you. You went from recommender systems researcher at Microsoft to CEO of a company selling enterprise AI into regulated financial institutions. What's the hardest thing you had to learn that had nothing to do with the technology?
Wow. It sounds like a cliche, but it's not. People are everything, truly everything. And I think that as a young entrepreneur, you hear everyone say people is everything, and you think that everyone say that because they are obligated to. So I will say that when you are a big company, both of the companies I worked at beforehand, they had more than 10,000 employees, now more than 30,000 employees. That's even if you won't do your job properly, someone else will. And it's horrible me saying that, but that's the truth. There are many people that they don't give their 100%, and it's okay. They still earn no other company will ever will. At a startup, you can be faster or better than two people. You cannot be faster or better than 10. So you need to have a strong team that is as capable and better than you in order to actually scale the company.
Great insight. Devere, this has been a great conversation, practical, honest, and genuinely useful for anyone trying to figure out what to actually do with AI beyond the pilots. For everyone listening, the insight I'll take from this is that before you build anything, you have to understand what's already happening, mind the conversations you're already having, the answers are in there. But where's the best place for people to follow what you're doing, building, and connect with you?
Sure. So first of all, my LinkedIn, I try to be extremely responsive and answer to everyone reaching out. Second is Dvir at gainanchor.ai, and of course our website gainanchor.ai.
Okay. Links will be in the show notes. And if this conversation shifted how you think about AI measurement, share it with a founder or revenue leader you know who's still chasing deflection rate. Thanks for listening. The real